Let's construct the Pacers rotation. Given the 15 players they have now, who should play how many minutes at what positions? Where can this get flexible? And when I did this exercise, what surprised me on who was and wasn't playing? We'll break it all down today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers as always. My name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the Westside Community News. And today we are going to try to construct the Pacers rotation for this upcoming season. 15 guys under contract. In theory, they could have 14 if Kendall Brown's on a two-way. Either way, I think their roster is set enough, barring a crazy trade happening in the next month or so, to go through and construct what, given the Pacers roster, their rotation could look like this season. And this exercise is always really interesting to me because I always end up surprised by a player or two that makes me enter the season going, oh, interesting, that guy might not play as much or that guy might play more than I had previously thought when doing the exercise last year. I found it really hard to get Torrey Craig on the floor, for example, when going through the Pacers rotation. And what ended up happening is Rick Carlisle opted to play Torrey Craig more than Shea Brassette to start the season. That ended up not being the case, but that was just an example of something last year that stood out to me when the early season. Jeremy Lamb played more than I had him in my projections last year. So just running through this can be helpful to see where it's going to be hard to find minutes and who's worthy of more minutes from last year, because some guys played a ton last year, very injured Pacers team. Either way, let's jump into it. We'll go the two guard positions, do a little break, do the forward spots, take a little break, and then do centers and surprises at the end. The point guard spot was the easiest one. And what I'll do here is I'll go through the candidates and the minutes distribution I came up with. The point guard spot, the guys who could be in the mix, Tyrese Haliburton obviously going to play a bunch, and then TJ Mcconnell and the newly signed second-round pick, Andrew Nembhard, in the mix for the backup minutes. Haliburton played a ton for this Pacers team last year, 36 minutes per game. Now, I think context is important there. He played mostly, not when he got to Indiana, but mostly in an environment where Brogdon was not playing in games, where their backups were guys like Kiefer Sykes, who was sometimes even not available. They had cut Brad Wanamaker at that point, so they didn't have a lot of backup point guards at that time. It basically was either Kiefer Sykes or Lance Stevenson, who was also getting minutes on the three. So they played Haliburton a lot. He played 36 minutes per game last season. That seems a little high just given standard wisdom of how many minutes these guys typically play, although not insane to me that he would play near that in many games if the Pacers try to get his development going or they're in the game and they would like to win. When I built this out, put Haliburton down for 33 minutes per game when the season is said and done. I think that makes a lot of sense. That's pretty heavy minutes for a high-quality starter. If he ends up being better than that level or the Pacers decide to go heavy on his development, maybe that gets up to that 36 number he was at last year. But with another young guard in the fold, they may want to develop a Nembhard and TJ Mcconnell healthy now, which was not the case for much of last season when Haliburton was with the team. I don't think he'll get quite up to 36. And then the other 15 minutes at that spot of the 48-minute rotation, I gave all of it to TJ Mcconnell, the veteran leader, the guy who can organize a bunch of young players, get them all in the right spots, help them be in the best situation to succeed. Those are the only two guys I gave minutes to. That's all McConnell and Haliburton's minutes were at those positions. I suppose they could end up playing together, which could move some of these guys to the two. That's hard to predict given what the fully healthy Pacers could look like, though. I thought that was pretty easy. Nembhard out for now, but if he impresses in like garbage time or one of those guys gets hurt or he plays well just when given an opportunity, I think he could steal some or all of McConnell's minutes as the season goes on. They drafted him fairly high. They gave him a long contract, longer than McConnell's. They clearly value him to some extent. If he's able to play a lick and they would like to develop him, I feel like he could steal some of those McConnell minutes, but none of the Haliburton minutes. Haliburton's going to play an absolute ton this season. I feel like 33 might even be selling it short. That's where I settled on the point guard rotation. I thought that was probably the easiest position. Maybe center was just as easy. Power forward was pretty easy too, but those two guys seem like opening night will be the two that will be thrown out there by Rick Carlisle unless they fall in love with Andrew Nembhard in training camp or McConnell is receptive to a more benchy, coachy-esque role. The two guard spot was where things got tough. And look, I had this question on the mailbag earlier this week, yesterday's show, for those who want to hear more about my thoughts on this. But who is technically your nominal starting 2 and 3 between Mather and Duarte and Hield? I would understand all those guys potentially being the starter. I gave them all minutes over half of the game, just to get them out there as often as possible and maybe make it a little more balanced. But I went with Mathurin as my nominal 2 starter. And there's not an easy basis for a rookie on a non-contending team in Pacerland to go, hey, this is how many minutes per game this guy should play. When I was thinking, how many minutes should the Pacers give to Ben Mathurin this season? He can't play as many as Haliburton. Playing 30 is really hard for rookies. They go from a 40-minute game to a 48-minute game, better competition. The conditioning's harder. So in my head, I thought 28 seemed like a good number to settle on, but I didn't want to just do it based on fully gut. So I went to last season's Pacers team and thought, okay, how many minutes per game did Chris Duarte play? Right, they're rookie from last year. They're a lottery pick from last year. Lo and behold, that number was exactly 28 minutes per game for Chris Duarte as a rookie. So if Mathurin maybe doesn't have to be as good as Duarte was to play that much because the Pacers don't have as much winning expectation. Maybe that number sneaks a little higher, but I think 28 minutes a game seems like a good amount to get Mathurin a ton of time, potentially get him in a bunch of lineups against different units, but still not have him be completely overloaded by what he has to do, by the guys he has to play with. And he has to be backed up for 20 other minutes of the game. And maybe if Hield's starting at the 3, this will be broken or something like that. But I gave 15 of those 20 minutes at the backup 2. And I'll talk about in the next segment or even here a little bit kind of how a lot of this is just nominal. Like you're calling this guy the 2, he's really playing the 3. It doesn't matter. But I assigned 15 minutes at the shooting guard spot to Buddy Hield. He played a lot at the 2 for the Pacers last season, even really starting there for his entire time here down the stretch of the season. You can even say he started at the 3 if you wanted. At times, next to Brogdon and Haliburton, for example, I would not begrudge that. Doesn't really matter. It's splitting hairs. I think that he, as the backup 2, will get a bunch of run with the bench. Has a lot of opportunity to do so there, or if he ends up starting at the 3, whatever, he could still be the backup 2, get some burn with that bench unit, provide spacing for young guys to play. But I did not give him all of the backup 2 minutes. I gave 5 minutes here to Aaron Nesmith. And I thought about giving Nesmith all of his minutes at the 3, but he's 6'5". He's not really hugely wing size. So it was hard to kind of break out what this could look like. So I gave 2 guys backup minutes at this 2 spot last year. And the Pacers were going about 10 deep late in last season, if you'll recall, with some of their second unit guys. When Lance was playing, when Gabe York was playing, that was really late in the season. But, when Lance was a backup guard and Dwayne Washington was a backup guard, and they had Duarte occasionally on the wing, but he was hurt sometimes too. But either way, they had a lot of guys getting in there to get reserve minutes at that 2 guard spot or really on the wing in general. I think it's possible they try to do that again. And Nesmith's an interesting spot. 3rd-year player with a 4th-year option for next year. They got him as a former lottery pick that could be a shooter in this Brogdon trade. Who knows how good he actually is? I think right now, tentatively, it's hard to say that he's a long-term piece with the Pacers, but you don't really know. And I think on a team that won 26 games last season, it's imperative to try to figure out what he can be. And I assigned him more minutes than just 5 minutes as the 3rd string, too. We'll get to that in the second segment. But finding him some spots in lineup versatile situations, I think playing with Mcconnell could be beneficial for him to be set up well to succeed. If he can get out there with Hield and Mcconnell, so a well-spaced floor where he could cut but also still spot up, would be really good for him. So I tried to find him some minutes in multiple roles, both so that he could play the number of minutes that I think makes sense for what the Pacers will want to see early in the season to try to figure out what they have with him, try to assign him to a role that makes sense and try to get everybody in the right spots, but also gives him some variety in who he's playing with and what role he's playing and who he's defending too. I think that's going to be the key part for Nesmith early. If the shot's not there like it wasn't last season for the Celtics, if he can defend, he can at least stay in games. He can be on the floor. You can give him a long runway to get better and grow with the core. If you have him out there defending 2s at times and 3s at times, you can really figure out where his niche is defensively, niche, whatever, however you say it. And that will allow him to grow more or have more opportunities to see what he is. Now, if he stinks on defense in both spots and the 3's not falling, it's only a couple minutes at both of these spots that you can assign to someone else. You can insert someone else into the rotation. He's a guy, him and Buddy Hield, and we'll talk about both of them again here. It's a small forward spot in the second segment, but I think they're the 2 guys that their role interchangeability in Buddy's case is really valuable, and in Nesmith's case is really important to evaluate who he is on the current Pacers team and what he could be ideally. So it's perfect for him to have that opportunity, and that's why I didn't just give all of Buddy's backup minutes at the 2 spot and split it at the 2-3 like I did with Nesmith. And speaking of the 3 spot, let's just get right into that small forward spot and the power forward spot, figure out what makes sense at those 2 positions. Before we do that, though, I would like to really quick talk to you guys about Built Bar, who are making the best tasting protein bars ever, 100% covered in chocolate, taste like a candy bar protein bars. They're actually healthy and delicious. They have a new cookie dough chunk puff flavor. Holy crap, it's so good. I already got to try them. They weren't released yet when I got them, but now they're out and you can try them yourself at built.com. They have a ton of other good flavors. The peanut butter brownie is my favorite, but they have so many good ones, some fruit varieties, some marshmallow infused varieties, some good s'mores ones. Oh, they're all absolutely amazing. What makes Built Bar great, again, not is that they all taste really good, although they all do taste really good, but also that they're healthy, right? The cookie dough chunk puff one, that their new flavor, 160 calories and 15 grams of protein. It can be a snack, it can be a meal supplement, however you would like to eat it. It's absolutely perfect. 100% real chocolate, collagen protein your body absorbs faster. It's absolutely delicious. You got to try it. You can get a mixed pack with a bunch of their most popular flavors. You can get that new cookie dough puff chunk flavor right on their website, built.com. Go check them out yourself. When you're checking out, use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. That promo code again is LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. Hey, for your second listen, hop on over to Locked On Warriors. Draymond Green wanting that extension for the Athletic. What's that going to look like for that team? They could get expensive very, very soon. They'll have it all for you over at Locked On Warriors. Let's move on to the forward positions here for the Pacers, what their rotation could look like at those spots. Very interesting spots. More candidates here than there were at the guard spots. Buddy Hield, Ben Mathurin, the obvious two-guard candidates, and Nesmith can be a 3-2. Those were easy. The 3, Kendall Brown's in the mix. Maybe Terry Taylor's in the mix. Maybe Brassette plays some 3 like last year. The forward spots in general were a little harder and less obvious. So I didn't give Duarte any minutes at the 2. I'm sure someone has made a noise or already commented on YouTube about that. And that's because I view him more as a 3. I think on this Pacers team right now, maybe not long-term, but right now, he is taller than Haliburton. He's taller than Mcconnell. He's taller than Mathurin. He's taller than Hield. He's taller than Nesmith, right? All of their guys that probably need to play are more 1 or 2 than he is. He should be nominally a 3 or start at the 3 due to his height. And I say that mostly because he can guard opposing threes better because of that height. And so it makes the most sense to me to have him play the bulk of his minutes at the 3. If you want to call him the 2, I don't care. It's just a designation. But I gave Chris Duarte all the minutes at the 3. 32 of them to be exact. A 4-minute bump over his rookie season. Well-deserved, I believe, after how well he played. Some other young guys for the Pacers, some other guys for the Pacers, got about that minutes load last year. Karis LeVert got 31. Brogdon got 33.5. That seems like about what a starting backcourt player got for the Pacers when they were more healthier, at least on the healthier version of the team early in the season. 32 minutes made the most sense for Chris Duarte to me at that spot. I gave, again, all those minutes there, but if you want to slot him at the 2, I don't care. It's all the wing to me, and that's why I put him there. And then backing him up, the same 2 guys that I had backing up Ben Mathurin at the 2 spot with just a little different minutes distribution, right? So Buddy Hield, I gave 6 minutes here at the 3, right? You could call him a 2. Again, it doesn't matter. These are all designations that are just for the sake of thought, but he could provide some spacing, play next to some guards. And he started the 3 a few times last season for the Pacers. He knows how to do it within what Rick Carlisle wants to do. They'll be losing a lot on defense with Hield there, but it could allow them to get some more interesting and creative lineups out there. And then the other 10 minutes at that spot, Aaron Nesmith got those for me. So between those 2 spots, Buddy Hield gets up over 20 minutes, which he deserved. Even if he does have some warts in his game, played much better for the Pacers than other franchises last year, deserves 20, 25, maybe even up to close to 30 minutes, depending on how things shake out. And then Nesmith now gets some minutes distributed to him between both the 3 and the 2 to, like I said in the first segment, get him out there, get him some variety, get him in lineup, see where he can be really good and helpful. So that means the 2-3 rotation. And now that I'm done with both, I can just kind of blend them because, again, it doesn't really matter. Like, who you're guarding is mostly how I define your position. If you're guarding the other 2, if you're guarding the other 3. Offensively, the roles can be interchanged. They're all similar-ish heights. It doesn't matter too much who you call what. But these 2 guys, two of these guys will be making up the wing spots. That's Mathurin, Hield, Nesmith, and Duarte in some combination, making up 96 minutes between the 2 and 3 spots, air quotes, on both of those because you could call them either. So the power forward spot's a little trickier, right? Kendall Brown, for example, did not get any minutes at the 3 for me. It's already hard to get the guys that I just gave minutes at the 2 and the 3 time. Terry Taylor, no minutes at the 3. I don't think he belongs at the 3, but in theory, his size suggests it's a possibility. Shea Brassette played at the 3 sometimes last season for the Pacers. I think he started a game or 2 there when they were really down bodies late in the season. They have some options that weren't there. I mean, Basketball Reference said Brassette, and Basketball Reference for their minutes just does inverse height. So like the shortest player is the point guard, blah, blah, blah. But either way, Shea Brassette played 1/5 of his minutes in lineups this past season where he was the third tallest player. And 2 seasons ago with the Pacers, 40% of his minutes, he was the third tallest guy. And he even was in a lineup where he was the fourth tallest guy. He has a 1% of his minutes listed at shooting guard for the Pacers, right? So he has been on the wing before. Either way, that means someone like him and Terry Taylor have to get all their minutes at the 4 to get this going. So this is where things got a little harder, although it ended up the solution just being this is where I think the best player won't play is at the 4 spot. We already know one thing. Jalen Smith is starting. I think besides either Buddy Hield or Duarte, the starting 5 is pretty obvious. Haliburton, Mathurin, check. Miles Turner, if he's still on the team, check. And Jalen Smith, we know publicly, stated by coaching staff, front office people, Jalen Smith promised the starting 4 role. That had to be part of the pitch to get him back to the team. 100% makes sense if they would like to develop him and keep him in-house as a former top 10 pick who played well for them. I get why they had to offer it, even though it may not be the optimal role for him right now or going forward. But if that's what it takes to keep him, they absolutely had to do it. No big deal. No harm, no foul. We'll see how long it lasts. Maybe it goes for a long time if this really gels. Either way, Jalen Smith is the starter at the 4. I penciled him in for 30 minutes at that spot. That felt a little aggressive, but if he's going to start at the 4, Sabonis started at the 4 last year, played 35 minutes. And then after he was traded, they started a variety of guys at the 4. Sometimes that was Jalen Smith, who ended up at 25 minutes per game for the Pacers last season. Brassette, who didn't even play in a bunch of the Pacers games, was only getting garbage time, finished up near 24 minutes per game, right? Like getting only 5 more minutes than that as the starter, named starter, permanent starter, seems very obvious. 30 minutes for Jalen Smith felt like the right number to pencil him in for. But I will concede that could go down to 28 very easily if he doesn't play well or if he's playing rockily or inconsistently. And then the backups minutes would go up. And it could go up if he continues to shoot well and fit well with other players on this roster. So only 18 minutes at the backup spot. I did not consider Kendall Brown. He's a rookie. But I did consider Terry Taylor. He definitely had some bright moments last year, more so at the 5 than the 4. Showed that he's an NBA-level player. That's why the Pacers kept him around, guaranteed his contract. He will be with the team for another season. Well earned. That said, I still think Shea Brassette is better. Shea Brassette can switch a little on defense. Showed 2 years ago he can shoot the 3. He's really mobile. His handle's better than Terry Taylor's. If Terry turns out to be a much better shooter this coming season, he could steal these minutes. I don't think the gap between the two is very big. But right now, right this second, I think I'd put Brassette a little bit ahead at that spot. And so I gave him the backup 4 spot with 18 minutes. But let me tell you, when I get to the surprises of this exercise at the end, Terry Taylor's name will be brought up quite a bit. So the 4 spot was ended up being for me just a simple 30 minutes for Jalen Smith, 18 minutes for Shea Brassette. But that could pretty easily change. I think this is probably the spot that I have the least confidence in of who the guys' minutes will be because of the following things. 1, Brassette can play 3, 4, or 5. Remember, he played 5 a little bit for the Pacers 2 seasons ago when they were really banged up and did okay. They ended up signing Amita Brima on a 2-way because it's really hard to play Shea Brassette at the 5 a lot, but they got away with it for a little bit. Like I said, he played the 3 quite often last season. He can play 3 positions. He could sneak in minutes elsewhere. And Jalen Smith is obviously a guy who can play the 5 and the 4. He could end up getting minutes at the 5, and then he's not playing 30 minutes at the 4. And then someone else has to get in there, whether that's Terry Taylor or Brassette or something gets shifted up. Maybe that means Isaiah Jackson's playing at the 4. And we'll talk about him at the center spot in the next segment. But there's a lot of interchangeability at this spot because those guys can play a lot of varying positions. And so this could be a role where, if one guy, all it takes is one player playing a little less than I thought, and you shift the pieces around or make it an 11-man rotation instead of 10, and boom, Terry Taylor's in there playing. He's your 11th guy. Or boom, Brissette's playing 25 minutes or something like that. I think this is the position I have the least confidence in, even though as I constructed it, I think that makes the most sense. And when I went through the minutes at the end of the exercise and put them in order, I thought it all made sense. So I thought the minutes made sense, even though I stumble over my words right now thinking, well, how does Terry Taylor not get in there at all? Not that he's awesome and is worthy of, a ton more minutes than maybe 15 right now, but he was really solid for the Pacers at times last season, really unique skill set. I think they would like to get him out there at least somewhat, but it might be hard given who they have. Maybe he could play some center, maybe not. Speaking of, let's close the show out. Final segment, the center rotation, and then who isn't in the rotation at all, and what kind of surprised me in this exercise, and what those surprises could tell us about what the Pacers rotation could look like next season. Let's do it. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. Hey, for your second listen, Locked On NBA. Hear the latest and greatest news from around the NBA, talking about who might not make the playoffs, who did last year, the Warriors, all that. And yours truly was one of the hosts. So if you want to hear me talk about the NBA, that's the way to do it. Let's wrap up predicting the Pacers rotation, looking at the center spot. The first starter at the three. Wow. The starter at the 5, very easy. Pencil him in, pen him in, Sharpie him in. Miles Turner will be the starter at the 5. I don't think that's any secret. He could play quite a bit. No more Sabonis to take some of his minutes on this team, assuming Turner starts the season on this squad. He finished last season at 29 minutes per game. I think that number could very easily go up as with Sabonis no longer in the picture. He played 31 minutes per game 2 seasons ago. Still think it's hard to imagine him getting up to 31 or even 32. I put down the number 32 because, again, Sabonis is no longer in the picture to play with the second units and steal some of Turner's minutes or close games without Turner. Those opportunities will be no longer available. I think we'll see more Turner than ever before, both as a display of his skill set and to let him kind of grow with this young team. So I put him down for 32 minutes. That felt very easy to me, him being the second highest minutes guy on this team. The backup 5, maybe this guy ends up playing some 4. Who knows? I gave all those minutes to Isaiah Jackson, who I think showed enough promise as a rookie to earn all 16 of the rest of the minutes at the 5 spot. He could get some minutes at the 4 if Jalen Smith's minutes move around or if Shea Brassette's minutes move around. Who knows? But that position, those 2 guys felt easy for me to put on the floor. Turner is maybe, probably the Pacers' second most talented player right now, behind Tyrese Haliburton. And Isaiah Jackson is a very promising player whose skill set and athleticism are unrivaled, not only on the Pacers team, but in general in the league. It's a very, very unique skill set he has, even though he's pretty raw still at only 19 or 20 years old. I can't remember his exact age at this time. Either way, those 2 should play. And the rest of the center rotation, Goga Bitadze, Daniel Tyse, don't have as strong of a case to play. But it was surprising to me to not have Goga play at all and not be able to find a spot for him. And in general, that was one of a couple surprises I had when doing this exercise. So first, let's run through the guys who I gave no minutes to. The easy 2, the second-round picks. Kendall Brown, no problem keeping him out. I think he could, if he impresses in garbage time or something, or gets a 2-way and is really good with Fort Wayne, could get promoted to a more usable role with the Pacers at some point this season. But when the season starts, I do not see him playing very often. And then Andrew Nembhard, like I said in the first segment, could end up stealing some of McConnell's minutes if things go well for him in certain moments or there's an injury, but I have him out right now. Second-round picks typically don't play a ton early in their career, although Malcolm Brogdon certainly bucked that trend, an ex-Pacer who played a ton his rookie year. Maybe if things break the right way, one or both of those guys could play. The other 3 guys with no minutes were a little harder/weirder to think about. Let's do the least weird one, but still a little weird one first. That's Daniel Tyse. I haven't even said his name yet on this show. There's no argument for me at least, for him to play over Turner or Jackson, even if his screening would be really valuable for this team. And as a veteran, maybe could provide something that helps the young guys. But what is the reason, especially if Turner's on the team, to have him out there? There's not really one. He doesn't give them more than some other guys or allow them at 30 years old to get the development time that they need. I didn't put him in. I didn't think that was that weird, but he's their 4th highest paid player, and he has some success in the postseason before. Like, he's a good NBA player. He's probably better. No. Let me remove the probably. He is better than Isaiah Jackson right now. He's better than Goga Bitadze right now, but that's not what the Pacers should care about when constructing this. If you floated me the argument he's better than Jalen Smith right now, I'd hear it. He might be better than all those guys, but I don't think he should play for the Pacers, and I did not put him in my rotation. Didn't even really consider him for any spots. The 2 weirdest / struggle guys for me that aren't playing is Goga, former top 20 pick, who is deserving of time, but it's hard to kick someone out of the rotation to get him in there. And Terry Taylor, who I thought was good for the Pacers last year and has enough positional versatility to maybe get in there. He started 7 times. He played over 20 minutes per game for the Pacers last season. I thought Terry Taylor I could find a role for, and maybe that is taking some of Brissett's minutes. Maybe that's Jalen Smith plays a little less or plays him at the 5 and Isaiah Jackson plays a little less. Maybe that's how they get Terry Taylor in there. But that would take it to 11 players unless someone that I put down totally doesn't play. I think the most likely guy to not play for Terry Taylor would be Shea Brassette, but perhaps if they do, Aaron Nesmith doesn't play, or if maybe they start the season with Nesmith in there, and if he doesn't impress at all, They give Brassette minutes at the 3 and then play Terry Taylor at the 4. I think that would make some sense too as a way to get the right guys out there, get the right development sort of going. Goga, look, I think Goga still has a place in this league, and I think it could be with the Pacers. But I mean, how do they get him out there? Who? Maybe he should play over Isaiah Jackson. I'd be receptive to that to an extent. I think Isaiah Jackson will be better not too long from now, but I think Goga's better right now. I would understand Batadze being the backup 5 when the season opens. Maybe they can, like I said with Terry Taylor, find Isaiah Jackson some of Brassette or Jalen Smith's minutes at the 4 if they want to get him in there and make it an 11-man rotation. Goga, I feel like, should play. But he can't. It's hard to find the right minutes for him. It's hard to cut someone for him unless they just straight up decide he is more deserving of minutes than Isaiah Jackson. We'll see. But I thought that was the weirdest one. Terry Taylor was the hardest exclusion because he was good last season for the Pacers. Nearly a 10 points per game guy, one of the most unique offensive rebounders in the entire NBA. Really, really quality player who still needs some work on defense, but is okay. Goga was good all-star break and on, not as good beforehand. But it's hard to find him minutes, even as a former top 20 pick. And that's weird and difficult. And I think something the Pacers will have to figure out and answer really in front of a mic early in the season. What do you envision? I'll probably ask Rick Carlisle this. First 3 practices, maybe even media day. What do you envision for Goga this season? How do you get him on the floor in a development position where he can be the best he can be? Because he's not really had those opportunities yet outside of Scantling at the end of this past season. And he was still fighting ankle injuries then that made it not possible. Perhaps playing with the Georgia national team as they host Eurobasket this summer could be an opportunity for him to get some of those minutes, to get that development. He hasn't been able to play in a single summer league his whole career, for example. He's had a lot of untimely injuries. Goga needs an opportunity at some point. I don't know what it is at the beginning of the season, but maybe he plays instead of Isaiah Jackson. I would get that. In terms of guys I actually put on the floor, looking at guys like Haliburton, it's not really fair to compare last season's minutes to this season's just because, like I said, they had a ton of injuries when he was here. Their rotation was super weird. Same kind of deal with Buddy Hield. The guys whose minutes I did compare to last season, who were substantially-ish different in the minutes that I ended up for them versus last year. One was Miles Turner, who was at 29 last year and up to 32, adding 3 minutes with the subtraction of Sabonis. I thought that made sense. I didn't think that was that surprising. The other two, though, were a little different. Shea Brassette finished last season at 23 minutes. I think a lot of listeners know how I feel about him being a talented 24-year-old player. That seems like something the Pacers should try to pursue minutes for, but again, it's very difficult. Like I said many times, going through the 4 spot, going through the 5 spot, there might be some other guys that want to get out there and play and figure out how they can impact the game or be in the rotation or help the Pacers eventually win at some point. Is Brassette a guy who you can get a lot of minutes to? Getting him to 23 again will be hard. I ended up with him at 18, a 5 minutes per game drop from this past season, and a 7 minutes per game drop from his first season with the Pacers when he was really helping them down the stretch of the fanless 2020-21 season under Nate Bjorkgren. That was one of the droppers. And then another really surprising one was TJ McConnell. TJ McConnell played 24 minutes per game this past season for the Pacers. It was hard for me to believe that number was that high, but it was. And he played a lot early in the season, if you'll recall. Like he was getting, remember that there was that stretch where he got like 30 minutes per game a few times, and they won like 5 out of 7 or something, and he was their best player in many of those games. He had like a 21-point game against the Kings, I think. The 21-point game was against Utah. That's right, the Gobert shuffle game. He had 18 and 7 and 4 in a win over the Kings. Anyway, all this to say, he had a really good stretch where he was playing a ton of minutes. And then when he closed the season, he was also playing a ton of minutes. But he played a lot more than I remember, and a couple starts as well for the Pacers this past season. I had him 9 minutes per game less than last year. He played 26 under Nate Bjorkgren two seasons ago. So maybe McConnell plays more than I thought. He has the engine ability to get stuff going and get guys moving. And maybe that means Haliburton plays the 2, but then you got to slash Nesmith or Hield's minutes, or you cut that guy out entirely. It's really hard with McConnell. I feel like he's a guy who could lose minutes from this past season, but as many as he seems to be losing is interesting to think about and believe. And I think maybe something could give there. But when it's all said and done, the minutes distribution is a 10-man rotation. Tyrese Haliburton at 33, Chris Duarte at 32, Miles Turner at 32, Jalen Smith at 30, Ben Mathurin at 28, Buddy Hield at 21, Shea Brassette at 18, Isaiah Jackson at 16, TJ McConnell at 15, and Aaron Nesmith at 15. If you want to give Nesmith 10 and Hield 26, I think that makes a lot of sense as well. I leaned a little more towards development in this exercise. Let me know if you agree with how I structured this, or how you feel like someone should play that I didn't give enough minutes to, or if you think the distribution's all wrong, or if the positions are all wrong, because this is a tougher exercise than it's been in past seasons for the Pacers. Last year was basically Torrey Craig or Shea Brassette, who's stealing those backup 4 minutes. This year is way different than in years past in terms of difficulty and the Pacers' goals of do they want to get vets time? Do they want to develop as much as possible? Will really influence what a lot of these things look like. So let me know in the YouTube comments or on Twitter at TEastNBA if you would like to know more about this or have your own thoughts on this exercise. This podcast is at Locked On Pacers. If you want to follow me there, that would be awesome as well. Tomorrow, like I said earlier this week, before I scheduled like a dummy, James Boyd will be joining the show, perhaps one of his last days with the Indianapolis Star. So I'm glad I can have him on one more time while he's still on this Pacers beat. You don't want to miss it. So thank you guys a ton for listening. Hope you have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.